I was always into creepy stuff ever since I was little. That includes the Ouija board. Of course, my mom always told me never to play with one, but I was a stupid teenager. It was nuts because we didn't actually have a board, my friend just knew how to draw one out. So we got a poster board. She drew it out. We made the makeshift heart thing. She explained how it all works, so we sat around, the three of us, and we started playing. I automatically assumed one of my girlfriends was moving it around, because it was moving around pretty smoothly and answering all of our questions clearly. That's what I always assume when I heard about people playing. It wasn't until it said something really creepy to us that we kind of started getting mad at each other. We were asking the usual questions teenage girls would ask. Who would lose their virginity first? It told us who, what order, at what ages, and the names the guys we would be with. Honestly, it was so descriptive it almost seemed real, but it was strange. The one girlfriend who was religious and really controlled by her parents, it said she would lose it first. At the time, it made no freaking sense. Said I would lose it last and the other girl in the middle. Then we asked, who would get married? It said who would get married, didn't say the partners' names, but it did say who would get divorced and have kids and whatnot. It said the one girl that was religious would never get married. The other girl would get married and divorced, and I would get married and never divorced. I guess all the questions and answers were just entertaining, but kind of starting to rub the wrong way. No feelings were getting hurt, but it was weird. That's when it started to get weird. One of us asked, will we be friends forever? Though whatever it was, we spoke to said no, that two of them would be friends, but that they wouldn't be friends with me anymore. I remember getting upset. I looked up, not removing our hands. We were all confused discussing who's moving it. We all looked terrified. We all swore that none of us were moving it. At that moment, we're all kind of pissed about the things that were being said because it was kind of offending every single one of us at this point. It was in that moment I knew I wasn't moving it, and I knew they wouldn't lie about this. It was too weird. Everything was so detailed and strange. And it was almost insulting, saying the religious girl would be the one who had intercourse first and never married. It was saying she would lose it in a car. Why would she say that about herself? At that time, only I had had a BF, so me losing it last seemed off. So everyone was kind of getting offended by the things it was saying. AKA one wasn't getting married, one divorced. So as much as it would prop one of us up, it would pull us down too. We ended up asking it to say something that would prove it was real, something that only it knew that we didn't. It said, Bruce was cheating on his wife Kelly and they'd get a divorce. Who the heck is Bruce and Kelly? It just kept repeating itself, so we just kind of ignored it and moved on. As teenagers, we didn't really give a shit about people getting divorced. What it said next was really creepy and sent us into a tizzy among all the questions we were asking. After we knew it wasn't us moving it, we looked back down at the board and we didn't say anything. It just started to move. It asked, did we want to know something? And we said, know what? And asked,
do you want to know when you're going to die?
We got so freaked out we just pulled our hands off immediately, which I know you're not supposed to do. At that point, we were screaming and not thinking clearly. We got the attention of some of our other friends that were in a different section of the basement, and they came over, asked what the heck was going on. There were two other friends. They were dating and doing God knows what. It's why we banished ourselves to that part of the basement to play this creepy-ass game. Her mom was upstairs. It was the only way they could be alone together, is if we were all together. We were using a candle because of this. They were doing stuff over on the other side and wanted the lights dim. They were playing music, so they didn't really hear what was going on till we freaked out. We did explain what happened to the couple. He wanted to play because he thought it was badass. He literally had to talk us into it by taunting us. He said it's all fake. It's not real, that we're just making it up. We said it's real. It's almost like our egos got the best of us that we forgot how scared we were because we wanted to prove that it was real and knew strange things. Anyway, when we went back to playing, her boyfriend played, but not her. She was too freaked out and went upstairs. Immediately he said, "Prove that you're real. Do something." This should have been the sign that we stopped. It said, "Get her to play, get her to come back down." It said, "I need more of your energy to create something." So her boyfriend yelled. She opened up the door, he persuaded her to come down, and he begged her to play. She relented and she played. It just asked us to put our hands on the pointer and wait. I remember time had gone on and we would say, "How much longer?" And it would say, "A few more minutes." Got to the point where our hands were falling asleep. We had kinda forgot, speaking amongst ourselves, that maybe we should just end it. But her boyfriend didn't want to. Maybe it had been about 10 minutes. We ended up chatting amongst each other about anything else. That ended immediately when her boyfriend and religious girl started screaming and pointed in the direction of where the candle was. They were facing it, so seen it the best. They got up as we turned to look. I looked over and what used to be a normal candle wasn't anymore. The flame was about 6 feet in the air and blue. It was almost hitting the ceiling. We all screamed and ran up the stairs. As we ran up, we could hear a low, gargling, groaning scream that felt as if it was behind you and got louder and louder. All the hairs on my neck stood up. I've never been so terrified. We ran out her front door and just stood on the front lawn, screaming and crying. One girl peed herself. One girl had a white streak in her hair permanently after. It was one of the most stressful experiences we've ever had as friends. The neighbors almost called the cops, but her mom came running out and was so confused and calmed us down. I think the neighbors thought we were just watching a scary movie or something. Our parents all picked us up. We never really talked about it again, just about how scary it was. It was almost too scary to talk about. Now for the creepier part, if you've made it this far. Remember the part about Bruce and Kelly? Because we were in junior high, all the teachers were called by their last names. We found out our teacher and his wife were getting divorced because he no longer wore his ring. He had a tan line there, and someone asked if he lost his wedding ring. He mentioned his separation from his wife and quickly changed the subject. We later found out his ex's name was named Kelly and his name was Bruce. We were mortified. However, in time it started to fade. I feel memories, scary ones, feel more like a dream. Even a week after it happened, it didn't feel real. You think your mind is playing tricks on itself, and that's how you get over it. That's how you're able to sleep at night. I still get shivers down my spine every time I recall everything I experienced that night. I was about 17 to 18, a senior in high school, and I always hung out with my sister who was 5 years older than me and her friends. That night it was us siblings, her best friend Hannah, who was the same age as my sister, and our friend Greg, who was about 20 and enlisted in the Army. We thought it would be a great idea, since it was close to Halloween, to play with an Ouija board for the first time together. We got an Ouija board and decided to turn off all the lights in the house and light a few candles to really set the mood. So we sat in the floor of the living room and started our little game. I was sitting between Hannah and Greg and across from my sister. It took a while, but we finally got a response when Greg asked if anyone was there. The planchette slid to yes. We kinda giggled because we thought one of us was responsible. But then it started spelling out Momo. My sister and I immediately went pale and made eye contact across the board. Our grandmother had passed away next door about a year prior to this. Before we could ask another question, the planchette spelled out the word love. We still weren't convinced. A little spooked but not scared. Greg then asked the board, "How many children did you have?" And the planchette slid to the number 2, which is the correct number of kids our grandmother had. It's important to know that Greg and Hannah didn't know much about our grandmother. They came into our lives after our grandmother had passed away, so they never met her. The planchette then spelled out the words Roll Tide. Now we live in Alabama, and my grandmother was the biggest Alabama football fan. She would watch every game. The Alabama football catchphrase is "Roll Tide." My sister and I immediately begin crying because it just seemed so unreal. And then the planchette starts moving again. This time it's sliding around and going to goodbye. I ask, "Do you want us to stop playing?" And the planchette quickly slides to yes. My sister doesn't want to stop. She asks, "But why? We want to ask more questions." And the planchette quickly moved across the board to spell out the word "bad." This is enough for me. I felt like if this was my mama and she was telling us to stop playing, maybe we should take her advice and stop. She said bad. Does that mean something bad will happen, or this is bad? I don't want to find out. But after trying to convince my sister and friends, it did no good. The planchette keeps circling the board and going back to goodbye over and over again. Finally, everyone says goodbye because it was clear nothing else was going to be discussed. But then, for some reason, I was talked into participating again. This time, when something answered us back, the planchette moved across the board even faster, but it was between two letters. Z-O-Z-O-Z-O-Z-O-Z-O, and that's all it would say. I don't know what the others felt because we really didn't talk about it much, but it felt like the room became colder. It was unanimous that we decided to say goodbye. We were shaking. Whatever we spoke with just didn't feel right. My sister and I decided to sleep in the same bed. I remember laying in bed and being huddled together and just looking around the room. Every sound made me jump. I swear I could see dark humanoid figures around the room. Maybe it was paranoia. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking about how Mama or whatever was imitating her said the word bad, like it was a warning. My sister ended up getting rid of the board shortly after. I'm not sure what she did with it. I know her and some other friends tried to play with it again in a very old graveyard near our house with graves from back in the 1800s. While they were playing, they heard what sounded like footsteps in the woods around the graveyard, and what sounded like scraping on one of the headstones. But whatever may be the reason, I don't plan on touching another Ouija board ever again. My family had a huge closet full of old board games, and one of them happened to be an Ouija board. I always wanted to try it out, but my family was always home, and I felt weird trying it in front of them, as my mother always told us to stay away from that board, and it was shoved into the back of the closet and forgotten about. Until one weekend when my parents were going to the city and my brother was going with them, so I would have the whole house to myself. The weather was terrible. Windy and rainy, but I felt that a rainy night would actually make it more spooky. Around midnight, I set up the board in my dining room and dimmed the lights. I asked a bunch of questions that generated no answers. I got bored, so I eventually set the board aside and went to bed. I was awoken in the middle of the night by a creaking noise downstairs by the front door. At first I thought nothing of it, but then I heard it again, and it was closer this time, closer to the stairs. I sat up now. At this point I was getting scared. Another creaking sound, this time from one of the stairs. I was sure then and there that somebody was in my house. The creaking sounds were getting closer and closer until they were right outside my door, and then they just stopped. It felt like hours as I sat there clutching my covers waiting for something to happen. A huge strike of lightning momentarily lit up my bedroom, and I swore I could see kind of black limb-type objects wrapped around the open door. I tried to hold my breath to be as quiet as possible, but what happened next was the worst part. My door suddenly slammed shut and I couldn't help but let out a shriek. By now I was completely under my covers, shaking and wanting to cry and scream. All the windows in the house were closed, so there was no draft. I just knew something was going to happen, but to my surprise, nothing did. I sat under my covers for hours thinking somebody or something was in my room with me. I could hear heavy breathing as if someone was standing right there by my bed. Then as quick as it came, it was gone. It was probably only minutes, but to me it felt like hours. When the sun started to rise, I finally snuck a peek out from under my covers. My room was just as empty as before. I somehow found the courage to leave my bedroom and search for any signs of a break-in. Everything looked normal though. No broken windows or unlocked doors. I then spotted the Ouija board laying on the table just as how I'd left it there hours before. I had always been kind of superstitious, so I immediately linked the happenings to the Ouija board. I chucked the damn thing in the outside trash can. Since then, nothing has happened and I didn't tell anybody about it. You wouldn't understand unless you were in that kind of situation. Then you would agree that nobody would believe a word you say. I know for a fact that those events were linked to that damn board. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. This would mean everything to me. Until we meet again.